Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we're going to be going over the Louisville top 8 and some other interesting deck lists, as well as talking about the day 1 meta, which you're looking at right now, as well as the day 2 as well. So it's the first US tournament with the Stellar Crown cards, of course reacting to some of the previous tournaments we've had, but a pretty interesting day 1 spread. Almost 2,000 players at this one, and Raging Bolt came out at 14% as our most popular archetype, followed by Terrapagos Dustoir at just above that 10%. Dragapult also doing well, obviously winning over in Dortmund. Then we have 8% for both Lugia as well as Regidrago V-Star, and actually Origin Form Palkia plus Dustoir also made it to that day 1 graphic, which is really exciting. Obviously it did have a good performance at some of these tournaments, and was actually like a known quantity before Stellar Crown even was released, so it seems like players have had enough time to take that deck list and bring it to this tournament. Getting into the day 2 graphic then, pretty much everything holds firm except for Dragapult. That one fell off quite substantially from day 1 to day 2, not on the graphic anymore. And the deck that crept back into the data was Charizard Pidgeot with 18 of them. Charizard, of course, being one of those archetypes that can do really well into a field with Raging Bolt as the most popular archetype, and obviously still has a huge amount of power behind it. Dragapult kind of being that big loser of day 1 and day 2. We know it struggles into Raging Bolt, we know it's not the best into Lugia either, and with one of its main selling points, Charizard, not being on the day 1 graphic, in fact being under that 8%, meant that there wasn't really nice matchups for Dragapult to feast on. For a more holistic view of the day 2 breakdown, we have the lovely pie chart from CCG. Just a different representation of those decks that we've just seen. Actually, Snorlax had a little bit more than Palkia. I think sometimes Arcanine may not classify Snorlax the same way that Limitless do. So Snorlax also had a very good conversion from day 1 to day 2 once again. And as we'll see later, there were some showings for Lousiville Box, Ironthorn still doing pretty okay, and a few showings of Gardevoir, as well as Banette Guardi, Golden Go, Ancient Box, and Miraidon as well. The final thing I wanted to touch on before we got on to the deck lists themselves was just a shout out to the @PokerHive handle on X, because this is just a great representation of the day 2 matchup data. They go over all the archetypes that were in day 2 and then show their win percentage. Obviously, this is a small number of games, so the data can be quite swingy, but because this is all day 2 matchup data, you can expect the pilots of these archetypes to be relatively strong, so it may give you a better idea of how the matchups actually play out at a high level compared to the mass number of games that you see in the online scene without really knowing the skill set of the players themselves. Let me know if you would prefer me to use this matchup data in some of my videos compared to using the online results. I'd be really intrigued to see which one you lean towards more being correct. Although I just know already I can sense the comment section getting inflamed over 100% and 0% win rates into certain matchups. So coming home with its first win in the West is Raging Bolt Ogerpon, piloted by Caleb Gedema. This is his 4th regional win in the modern era, and he's piloting a pretty interesting build of Raging Bolt Ogerpon, to be honest with you. There are some Pokemon standouts, so Luminion V sticks out to me as an option you rarely see in the Raging Bolt lists. And there's also the Slitherwing single prize attacking threat over the Sandy Shocks. The upside of Slitherwing is that fighting typing is really solid right now, with so much Pheasantipity EX in the format for a gusting play, but also of course Terrapagos picking up in play in a number of decks. Caleb also chose to play no Iono in the deck list, and instead committed 3 deck spaces to Bravery Charm. If you watch my most recent top 10 video, you'll notice how much I was pushing for Bravery Charm to make it back into the deck list, and Caleb and Xander Pero and a few other players went really heavy on these counts, really just trying to make opponents draw better, find their answer cards, also just capitalizing on the lack of vacuum in format. We know this card could be fantastic for denying Briar plays from opponents by Bravery Charming your Radiant Greninja, preventing that 4-prize swing turn. You can also see that with 3 Switch Card and 3 Bravery Charm, you're definitely feasting on the Dragapults trying to set up damage. And that hit point buff could also just be relevant in mirror match situations. It comes up so much, to be honest with you. It made a lot of sense for this weekend, with tool removal on the down low. Another small nuance of the 60 was going down to 5 grass energy. 6 has been a sweet spot for a long time, but it was offset with the 4th copy of Energy Retrieval, which is just an all-star card in the deck list to make sure that you're still teal dancing, getting concealed cards in, and of course having the right attachments for your Bellowing Thunders turn by turn. Michael Davidson made it all the way to the finals with Lousiville Box, making that big comeback. The deck list itself is very reminiscent of Hedrick's NAIC 60, with monster item counts and that quad Pokestop. I also really enjoyed the very cute inclusion of Spiritomb for this tournament exactly, with a number of Stage 2 decks going up to 2 Rotom V actually, and the fact that you can disrupt Lugia players as well as Snorlax players. There's just so much that Spiritomb catches right now. Of course, Hedrick played Iron Thorns at the NAIC, and perhaps there's not enough meta percentage of Lugia to actually include that card, versus a Spiritomb which is more of a catch-all solution to a number of matchups. I think this bold meta call was kind of made possible by the fact that we've seen Regidrago over a number of tournaments now be below that 10% mark, kind of opening the door once again for Lost Zone box to have a place in the meta. Whilst at the same time, many of the stage 2 archetypes are forgoing Mana Feet altogether, helping that Moonlight Shuriken and Lost Mine completely control board states over stage 2 decks, especially if that attack is coming out on turn 2 of the game. Palkia Dustoir once again lands itself in top 4, this time piloted by Kyle Letztowitz, who got their second top 4 at a regional. The decklist is not too dissimilar from Evenov's from the previous weekend, this time a few less track issues in the 60, and opting to have the likes of Rotom V to end on a large hand size after turn 1. And after this weekend, I think it's fair to say that this is an established archetype in the meta right now that we definitely have to test against some respect. Charizard Dustoir also made it into top 4, it was with Sebastian Lachmet. I actually have his World Championships decklist from 2022 when he was a senior downstairs, so really cool to see him coming back with the top placement in the Masters division. There aren't really many tricks or outlandish inclusions from the decklist at all. It's pretty much just going with the most frequently occurring cards in the deck, and there's good reason for it. The one thing I keep exploring with Charizard is the A-Spec choice. Unfair Stamp is of course a strong option, and gives you more consistency with your Arven, but something in the back of my mind is still telling me that Hero's Cape is a great choice right now. Another top senior who aged up this season was piloting Regidrago to a top 8 finish, Benjamin here, and the recent wave in Regidrago has been weaving in a thin knockdown package. In this case it's a 1-1 line. There's really not much space that you can sacrifice in Regidrago, but the fact that 2 slots have been made does show just how powerful Jewel Seeker is. There are some big selling points here, just getting to play an extra single prize Pokemon is not even a bad thing, and giving yourself that chance to save a Legacy Star is massive. On the flip side, if you happen to use a Legacy Star, keeping things like Ultra Ball around, which are obviously going to be live from Mew EX and Fezandipity in the deck, can find you those easy routes to game with a simple Jewel Seeker. Kieran Farrer continued his tear with Lugia and brought back the same 60 he piloted to a second place finish. Yeah, what can I say? The man knows Lugia and pilots it very, very well. The other top 8 Lugia was Yurko Valencia, who actually had a much spicier deck list, incorporating that 1-1 Chinchino plus Weird Ear Raikou amalgamation that we've seen from Rahul. And in fact, adding to that amalgamation is the Wellspring Ogerpon EX to have surprise snipe plays. Again, just sort of cashing in on a format where Manaphy is underrepresented. Yoko is quite high on the ball search cards with a 2 Nest, 2 Great Ball, but I think the real innovation is the 1 copy of Arven plus Vitality Band in the 60. I think the main reason is so that Tempest Dive can hit 230 into Terrapagos and other basic EXs, but I'm sure you can find many more applications just because of how many different attacking threats are in the list. I suppose Arven also sort of fits that role of like when Serena, the supporter card, was in the deck list, because simply Arvening for Ultra Ball can sometimes be a solution for you to get your second chopped in the discard pile whilst finding your Lugia V-Star, especially in a deck list like this that has the Great Balls to still reach towards those stage 2s. The final top 860 was Gabe Smart's Terrapagos Dustoir list. I'm a fan of a lot of the counts Gabe's got here, and it's interesting to see the Manaphy making it into the list to at least give you that crumb of protection and force opponents to draw a little bit better, rather than just accepting all your basics hitting the discard pile into certain matchups. The one thing I would argue is whether or not Vitband plus Manaphy is better than just playing 2 Boof and then finding a heavy ball slot somewhere. I feel like that would be kind of close, but I do understand that Bouffalant can be a lot clunkier than just poffering out a Manaphy for free. As for the other successful deck lists in top 16, we saw a Snorlax block list. Nothing too outlandish with the 60 itself, just a constant reminder that it's here. You know, they have to dodge the Lugias, of course, and it just takes hitting like 2 of them to be at the tournament, it seems. But Snorlax is still such a great performer at getting out of day 1 to day 2. Dragapult had a tough old time in both day 1 and day 2, although Ryuki's 60 did manage a top 32 placement here in the hands of Jesse Spencer, so it seems like it was mostly a matchup issue for Dragapult rather than the archetype itself kind of being overhyped. Pidgeot Control also still doing its thing, still making those high placements by the handful of players actually choosing to pilot it. You can see it did make top 32 here by a couple of pilots. Piper had her take on the Polish Gardevoir Burnett archetype that was doing well in Dortmund and managed a top 64 placement. And the Cheese String managed to get a top 64 spot as well, this time leaning heavier into those Pokestops and Night Stretchers rather than seeing the Bibarrel package. Also went for the cheeky Countercatcher plus Hyper Aroma A-Spec choice rather than having Prime in the list. This is really just a testament to how strong the core of Palkia Greninja is in the format right now. Obviously this 60 is still playing that cancelling clone, so you can brute force it in a number of matchups, but really the state of the format over the last couple of weeks just hasn't really respected Shuriken at all, and players like this have been able to cash in. So that's it for Louisville. I believe it's the only tournament in the US that is going to be in this format, but we still have a couple over here in Europe. This weekend coming up, it's going to be Lille as well as Gdansk in early November. Early knee-jerks, I'm expecting the likes of Lost Vacuum to start making its way back into certain deck lists, maybe even some Lugias starting to add the jamming towers again. I'm also interested to see where Regidrago lands with the new hype of Lost Zone box picking up again. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.